The desert was endless and silent under the burning sun, and Ethan Cole walked slowly over the hot sand, feeling the heat rise in waves around him, and the wind whisper dry and thin across the dunes, and he thought there could be nothing alive out here for miles when his eyes caught something strange ahead, a shape that did not belong in the desert. A smooth shadow on the golden ground, and his heart beat faster as he climbed the highest dune to see it clearly. And there, standing silent and half buried in the sand, was a silver ship, its surface shining softly as if it had never been touched by time. The metal looked strange, not like steel or aluminum, but something smoother, brighter, like liquid frozen in shape, and it gave off a faint glow in the sunlight, and Ethan felt a coldness in his stomach, even though the air burned around him, and he stepped forward, the sand slipping under his boots, and then he heard it, a voice not in the air, but inside his head, speaking his name. Ethan. "Cole, you have returned." And he froze, his breath stuck in his throat because there was no one around, no radio, no speaker. Only the ship and the voice continued. "We have waited 500 years, and he wanted to run, but something kept his feet moving, until he stood only a few steps from the hull and saw that strange glowing lines ran across the surface like writing in a language he did not know. The letters moved slowly as if alive, shifting their shapes, and when he reached out to touch one, the wind roared behind him, a sandstorm rushing over the horizon, the sky darkening as the wall of dust raced forward. But the sandstorm split around the ship, flowing to each side as if the air itself refused to touch it. Ethan stared wide-eyed, and the ground seemed to hum beneath him. The lines of light brightened, and a sound like a slow heartbeat filled the air. The storm's roar fading into silence as the silver surface shifted and an opening appeared, a doorway melting into shape from the smooth wall, and a cold blue light spilled out, washing over the sand and making his skin prickle, and deep inside the ship a shadow moved and the voice called his name again. This time louder and closer, and he stepped back unsure if the thing inside was friend or enemy. The air smelled different here, sharp and clean, as if it had never been breathed before. The shadow came closer, its shape long and thin with glowing eyes that blinked like stars, and Ethan felt every muscle in his body tense as the blue light brightened until the world around him faded, and all he could see was the figure standing in the doorway watching him, and in that moment he knew whatever this ship was, wherever it came from, it had not landed here by accident. It was waiting for him and only him, and it had waited for 5 centuries without moving, without rusting, without fading, until the day he would come to this place alone in the burning desert with no one to hear the voice. But him. Ethan stood frozen at the doorway as the figure inside stepped back and the voice in his head softened, telling him to enter, and every instinct screamed not to, but something stronger pulled him forward, and he crossed the threshold into the ship the moment his boots touched the floor. The heat of the desert vanished, replaced by a cool, still air that smelled faintly of metal and rain, and the walls glowed faintly like moonlight as they curved smoothly around him without corners or seams. The doorway behind him melted shut until there was no sign it had ever been there, and a faint hum surrounded him like the beating of a slow giant heart, guiding him deeper through a narrow passage. The voice spoke again, saying, "You have returned to finish what you began 500 years ago," and Ethan shook his head, telling the voice. It was wrong that he had never been here before, that it had mistaken him for someone else, but the voice only answered, "You are the same. You were chosen." The passage widened into a round chamber, and at its center floated a crystal sphere as big as his chest, turning slowly without any visible support. Inside it swirled clouds of light and shadow, shifting into shapes that looked almost human, almost alive. Ethan stepped closer, and the voice came from the sphere itself, speaking in a deep, calm tone. "You vanished in the battle. Your mission was left incomplete. And Ethan frowned, asking what battle, what mission, and the sphere flared with light, projecting an image into the air in front of him, and his breath caught, because it was him. Not just someone who looked like him, but exactly him wearing armor unlike anything he had ever seen, standing on a rocky battlefield surrounded by strange alien soldiers, both human and not the air full of fire and smoke and ships like mountains drifting overhead, and the projection showed him leading a charge, a sword of light in his hand and a roar on his lips. The scene shifted to a black sky filled with burning stars, and Ethan could hear screams and explosions as if they were happening now, and the sphere spoke of a race called the Drail, who came from beyond the known stars, consuming worlds, leaving only dust and silence behind them. The humans of that time fought alongside other races, but the Drail were too many, and the last hope rested on a weapon called the Key, something Ethan in that life had carried into battle, but before it could be used, he had been lost, trapped in a fold of time. The projection dimmed, leaving only the sphere turning slowly as the voice told him, "The Drail have returned to this world. They will finish what they began, unless you complete your mission." And Ethan felt his hands curl into fists. But still, he said, "This is impossible. 500. Years ago I wasn't even born." But the voice replied, "Time does not flow. For all in the same way, you are the same man you have always been." The hum in the walls grew louder, and symbols began to light up along the chamber, glowing in patterns that seemed to match the strange lines on the outside of the ship, and the voice told him the ship had waited in silence hidden in the desert, until the moment his signal was near again. Ethan turned away, shaking his head, unable to believe any of it. But then the ship spoke again, telling him to listen, and the air filled with new sounds, distant screams, the crack of explosions, the burning rush of wind, and the image of Earth appeared in the air, blue and bright, but marked with points of red that spread like drops of ink in water. "The Drail have landed," the voice said. "They have come for the key, and they will kill everything to take it. Only you can stop them." And Ethan felt his mouth go dry as he asked, "Why me?" And the answer was simple: because you are the last one left. He looked at the glowing sphere, feeling the truth pressing in on him. But before he could speak, the ship whispered, "They are already here." And in his mind he saw the desert above the ship lit by strange lights moving across the night sky. That night, the desert was no longer silent. The wind carried strange low vibrations that made the sand tremble under Ethan's boots as he stood outside, staring up at the black sky, and there, between the stars' shapes, moved slowly and unnaturally, their lights not blinking like airplanes, but pulsing with a cold silver glow. He could feel them watching, as if they knew exactly where he was. The voice of the ship echoed in his mind, telling him the Drail ships are cloaked, feeding on human life. In secret, they will move fast. They will take cities and vanish, leaving nothing behind. Ethan swallowed hard and began the long walk back toward the nearest road, thinking he needed answers from someone who might understand. He remembered hearing about a retired scientist named Dr. Marlowe who had studied strange events and theories that the government dismissed as nonsense. If anyone would believe this, it would be him. The next day, Ethan reached a dusty small town and found Marlowe in a cluttered workshop filled with maps, dusty equipment, and faded photographs. Marlowe was an older man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When Ethan told him about the ship, the storm, and the voice in his head, Marlowe did not laugh or look surprised. Instead, he walked to a locked drawer and pulled out a yellowed file. Inside were photographs and old reports. One photo made Ethan's chest tighten. It showed a battlefield from centuries ago, burned and broken, and in the middle of it, a soldier with a sword of light in his hand. And it was his face, the same eyes, same jawline. No doubt Marlowe tapped the picture and said, "I've seen this image all my life. It's from a classified archive. They said it was an artist's imagination, but I knew it was real." And now you're standing here." Ethan stared at the picture, not knowing whether to feel afraid or angry, and told Marlowe the ship claimed he had fought in some ancient war, and that something called the Drail had returned. Marlowe's expression darkened, and he began pulling more photos and documents from his shelves, showing strange black clouds over cities, people vanishing in seconds, and shadows shaped like tall skeletal creatures. Marlowe said those clouds are not weather, they're life harvesters. They drain everything alive within minutes and leave nothing behind. They've been sighted before, but only in whispers hidden from the public. Ethan asked how to stop them, and Marlowe shook his head, saying, "If they are truly back then, the only thing that can end them is the key. But no one knows where it is." Ethan felt the voice of the ship in his head again telling him, "I know where it is, and I can restore what you have forgotten if you are ready to accept who you are." He closed his eyes and said yes, and the voice replied, "Come back to me now." Ethan left the workshop and returned to the desert, guided by a silver streak of light in the distance. When he arrived, the ship was waiting, its doorway already open the moment he stepped inside. The walls began to shift and slide, as if the ship was alive and reshaping itself in front of him. A high chair of silver metal rose from the floor, glowing faintly. The voice told him, "Sit and I will return your memories." Ethan hesitated, then slowly sat down. The metal was cold at first, then warm, spreading through his body. The walls of the ship dissolved into blackness, and he was falling through it until images began to appear around him. Battlefields, alien cities, skies filled with fire. He saw himself standing among soldiers, both human and alien, fighting side by side. He felt their fear and courage and grief as friends fell beside him. He saw the Drail not as shadows, but as towering beings with armor like bone and eyes like burning coals, their voices a chorus of hunger. He saw the moment he was given the key, a small, dark device covered in shifting lines, and he remembered his mission to reach the heart of the Drail fleet and end the war forever. But something happened. A blinding surge of light that tore time open and pulled him away. The memory ended with him gasping for air back in the chair. The voice told him the key still exists, hidden here on Earth. But the Drail are searching for it even now. The ship's walls returned, and the hum grew louder, warning him the enemy has already landed in a major city. He must move fast. Ethan stood ready, his mind still spinning, when the ship added one last thing. The Drail have a leader on Earth, one who has been hiding for centuries. And when the image formed in Ethan's mind, his blood ran cold. It was Dr. Marlowe. Ethan could hardly breathe as the image of Dr. Marlowe's face burned in his mind, and the ship's voice repeated the truth. Marlowe is not what he seems, he is a Drail. Commander hidden in human form since the last war. The thought twisted in Ethan's stomach because Marlowe had looked him in the eyes and pretended to be an ally. But now he understood how the Drail had returned so quietly. They had never truly left. Ethan demanded to know why Marlowe had not killed him yet, and the voice answered, "Because he needs you. Only your DNA can unlock the chamber where the key is kept, and without you, he cannot claim it." The realization made Ethan's hands curl into fists. He had walked straight into the enemy's lair and didn't even know it. The ship began to move, carrying him through the sky without a sound, and below the desert slid away into darkness, replaced by the lights of a vast city. The voice told him Marlowe is here. The Drail ship hides beneath this city. Their harvesters are ready. Ethan felt the floor vibrate under his boots as the ship descended until it hovered silently over the rooftops. The walls shifted again, opening a narrow ramp, and he stepped out into the warm night air. The city looked normal. Cars moved. People walked. Bright neon lights glowed in every direction, but he could feel the wrongness beneath it all, like a faint hum in the ground that no one else noticed. The voice guided him to an old abandoned subway entrance, rusted and dark. He moved down the cracked steps, his footsteps echoing until he reached the platform where a section of the wall slid open on its own, revealing a hidden tunnel. The air here was colder and smelled faintly metallic. The lights overhead flickered as he followed the tunnel deeper and deeper until it opened into a massive underground chamber that should not have been possible beneath the city. The walls were made of the same smooth silver metal as the desert ship, and in the center stood Marlowe. No disguise now, his skin pale and ridged like bone, his eyes burning with an inner red light, his long fingers curling as he smiled. Ethan Cole at last. Marlowe's voice was deeper now and seemed to vibrate in the air. You will help me open the chamber, and together we will end the cycle of your suffering. Ethan stepped forward and said, I'll never help you, and Marlowe tilted his head like a predator studying prey. You already have. The moment you sat in that chair, you unlocked the coordinates in your own blood. Now you will walk through that door for me. Ethan glanced to his right and saw at the chamber door. A tall oval shape covered in shifting symbols like the ones on the ship. Marlowe gestured, and two Drail guards emerged from the shadows, their armor black and sharp, their faces hidden behind bone like masks. Ethan knew he couldn't fight them in the open, so he played along, taking slow steps toward the door, his mind racing as he tried to think of a way out. The closer he got, the stronger a low vibration became until it was almost a sound calling to him. The door pulsed with light, and the symbols moved faster. Recognizing him as if they knew who he was, his hand hovered over the surface and the light brightened, but at the last moment, he stepped back and spun, kicking over a strange cylindrical device on the floor that shattered and released a burst of thick blue smoke. The Drail guards staggered as the smoke hissed against their armor, and Ethan ran into the dark side of the chamber, ducking behind a silver pillar. Marlowe's roar shook the air. Find him before he reaches the key. Ethan darted through a narrow service tunnel, barely wide enough for his shoulders, the sound of heavy footsteps chasing him, his heart pounding with every turn until he reached a small shaft with a faint glow at the bottom. Sliding down, he landed hard in another chamber smaller than the first, and there in the center stood a pedestal with an object on it no larger than his hand, black and smooth except for lines of light crawling across its surface. The key. He reached for it, but before his fingers touched the surface, a sharp hiss filled the room and a figure stepped from the shadows. It was Marlowe, his red eyes burning brighter than before, and his voice low and cold. You can't run from this, Ethan. The key belongs to us. And with one step, he was between Ethan and the only exit blocking the way out. Ethan stood frozen as Marlowe's tall skeletal frame seemed to stretch in the dim blue glow, the key pulsing faintly on the pedestal between them, and the heat from Marlowe's burning eyes pressed against his skin like fire. Ethan's mind raced. The ship's voice was silent now, leaving him alone with the predator before him. Marlowe stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate, his voice deep like stone grinding against stone. You don't understand what you are holding, human. That device is more than a weapon. It is the heart of our survival. Give it to me, and you will live forever. Ethan shook his head, feeling his breath quicken, and said, You mean I'll become like you? And Marlowe's expression twisted into something between a smile and a snarl. We are not so different, you and I. You have lived through centuries already. You have tasted death and returned. Imagine what you could do with endless time. The Drail could be your people. Ethan felt a strange pull in his chest. The key seemed to thrum with his own heartbeat calling to him, but he forced the thought away, gripping the pedestal's edge and pulling the device into his hand. The lines of light crawled faster across its surface, glowing brighter, and Marlowe's face darkened into rage. If you activate it without the final code, you will destroy yourself in the city. Ethan said, maybe that's better than letting you win, and spun toward the narrow exit. But Marlowe moved faster than human eyes could follow, his clawed hand striking the wall beside Ethan with a sound like shattering glass, blocking the way out. The impact made the floor tremble, dust falling from the high ceiling. Ethan ducked under his arm and ran, but Marlowe caught his shoulder, his grip like iron throwing him into a silver pillar, the air rushing out of his lungs, the key almost slipping from his grasp. The Drail guards appeared from the tunnel, their armor clanging softly, their long weapons raised, Ethan's instincts from. Another life kicked in. He moved low and fast, kicking the leg of the nearest guard and spinning to use his own momentum to throw him into the other, the clash of alien armor echoing through the chamber. He bolted through the opening, but Marlowe's roar followed him so loud it felt like it cracked the air. The tunnel twisted in sharp turns, and the vibrations from the key grew stronger with each step, until they felt like they were guiding him. He burst into a larger corridor with a steep incline, and ran upward toward faint daylight ahead. His legs burned, but he didn't stop behind him. The sound of pursuit grew closer, the hiss of the Drail weapons striking walls and leaving deep smoking scars. He reached the surface, emerging into a construction site on the edge of the city. The wind was sharp here, carrying the smell of dust and rain, clouds building on the horizon. The key in his hand felt heavier now, as if it knew the danger surrounding them. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't lead Marlowe. Back to the desert ship, not yet, the enemy would track it. Instead, he sprinted toward the street, weaving between steel beams and abandoned machinery when a shadow passed overhead. Not from a building, but from something massive above him. He looked, up to see a black triangular craft, shimmering in and out of sight, its form bending the air around it. The Drail were no longer hiding. Marlowe appeared at the edge of the sight, his tall frame cutting a sharp silhouette against the rising storm, his voice carrying easily through the distance. "You cannot win. Ethan, you carry a piece of us. The key will return to its rightful hands." Ethan didn't answer. He darted into a half-built tower, climbing unfinished staircases until he reached the top floor. The city spread beneath him, lights flickering, as if sensing what was coming. The black craft hovered closer, lowering until its shadow swallowed the rooftop. Marlowe rose toward it as if the air itself carried him, his claws reaching out. Ethan backed toward the edge, gripping the key tight, and the ship's voice finally returned in his mind, telling him, "Hold on. The final code is still within you. Trust the memory. You fear." Ethan closed his eyes for the briefest second, and a flash came. Not of this city, but of another sky on fire, and him standing on the edge of a ruined tower, holding the key as he entered the final sequence, his hands moving without thought, his voice speaking words in a language he didn't remember, now that. Memory surged back as Marlowe landed on the rooftop, his claws inches from Ethan's chest, and the black craft's engines roared, shaking the air. Ethan opened his eyes, the last fragment of the code burning in his mind, knowing the next move could decide whether the world lived or burned. The storm above the city deepened until the clouds turned black, and the wind screamed between the skeletal beams of the half-built tower. Ethan stood with the key clutched in both hands, its glow now fierce and alive like a caged star. Marlowe's towering figure moved closer each step, deliberate, his red eyes fixed on the device as if nothing else in the world existed. The black triangular craft hovered above the rooftop, bending light around it and lowering with a deep thrumming hum that rattled Ethan's bones. The ship's voice in his mind was steady, now speaking over the wind. "The final sequence is in you, speak it, and the key will awaken." Ethan's breath came fast, the memory from another. Life still sharp behind his eyes. He could almost feel the weight of the old armor on his shoulders, the shouts of soldiers in a language he didn't know. The firelit sky over an alien battlefield. Marlowe extended one clawed hand, his voice low, but carrying even through the roaring wind. "Give it to me, and I will end your suffering. There will be no more running, no more dying, only power." Ethan shook his head slowly and answered, "No more running, but not for your reasons." He moved his hands over the key. the glowing lines shifting to match the motion, as if obeying his will. Ancient words rose from his throat, unbidden, strange, and heavy, each one making the key's light swell brighter. Marlowe's eyes widened and he lunged forward, but Ethan twisted away and slammed the last sequence into place. The key erupted in a pulse of white light that threw both of them back. The black craft above them screamed like a living thing, its shape rippling as if the air around it was tearing apart. Marlowe roared, fighting against the energy, but the pulse grew into a wave shooting upward into the clouds and far into the sky. The ship's voice filled Ethan's head. "They are calling their fleet. The first wave will fall. You must take the key." To the desert before the second arrives. Ethan stumbled to his feet. The rooftop shaking under him, the black craft cracked open along its edges, spilling fire and smoke into the air, its form flickering before vanishing completely. Marlowe knelt on one knee. His armor cracked his voice, a ragged snarl. "This is not the end, human. You cannot stop what comes." Ethan didn't answer. He turned and ran for the stairwell. The key still blazing in his hands, lightning split the clouds above as he descended. The tower, the air thick with the smell of ozone and burning metal. He reached the street just as the desert ship's silver hull appeared from invisibility, lowering to the cracked pavement. Its ramp extending without a sound, Ethan sprinted aboard. The ramp closing behind him as the ship lifted smoothly into the air. The city fell away below the glowing red points he had seen before on the sphere's map, already spreading. The Drail were not retreating. They were only regrouping. The ship surged, forward faster than sound. The desert stretching beneath them. In moments, the voice told him, the key's energy will destroy the Drail mothership in orbit. But once used, it will scatter into the void. There will be no second chance. Ethan's hands tightened around the device. He thought of the images he had seen of burning worlds, of the screams in his restored memories, and he knew what he had to do. The ship broke through the clouds into the black silence of space. And there ahead, it was. The Drail mothership so massive it blocked the starlight, its surface bristling with towers and spines, glowing faintly from the energy it had stolen. The key's light grew almost blinding now. Sensing the enemy, Ethan stepped to the forward control platform, the ship surrounding him with a view of the mothership in every direction. The voice said, "When the key is placed here, its energy will release in all directions, and nothing of them will remain." Ethan took a breath and placed the key into the circular slot before him. The lines of light raced outward through the floor and walls, the silver metal of the ship turning to pure white as the energy built. Marlowe's voice suddenly echoed in his mind, even across the void. "You think this ends with me, but you cannot imagine the scale of what is coming?" Ethan ignored him, focusing on the light, until the key's power exploded outward in a silent, expanding sphere that swallowed the mothership, tearing it apart in an instant. The light faded, leaving only drifting fragments and stars. The ship's voice was quiet for a long moment, then said, "The first wave is gone, but deep in the dark, their armies still sleep." Ethan stared into the endless black, knowing this was only the beginning, and somewhere beyond the edge of sight, thousands of Drail ships were waking.